In a faraway corner of space, a small mining colony struggled to survive. This colony, named Outpost Delta, floated near a dying star that flickered weakly in the endless blackness. Life here was hard, and getting harder every day. The people who lived there worked long hours digging for minerals, hoping to send enough back to Earth to keep their operation running. But supplies from Earth had stopped coming months ago. The colonists were on their own. Rachel Monroe, the leader of Outpost Delta, stood at the edge of the main platform, staring out into the void. She was a strong woman with sharp features and tired eyes. Her dark hair was tied back in a loose ponytail, and her hands were calloused from years of labor. Behind her, the hum of machinery mixed with the murmurs of worried voices. Everyone knew they were running out of time. The colony's problems weren't just about food or fuel. The krill, an alien species native to the nearby planet, had grown more aggressive lately. These insect-like creatures had always been a nuisance, but now they seemed organized, almost like they were planning something. Just last week, a group of workers had gone missing while repairing the outer perimeter. When search parties went out, all they found were claw marks and torn scraps of clothing. Rachel sighed deeply and turned back toward the control room. Inside, screens displayed maps of the surrounding area and readings from the sensors. Most of the equipment was old and barely functioning, patched together with spare parts, scavenged from broken machines. Still, it was better than nothing. As she looked over the data, her assistant, Daniel Harper, walked in. He was a young man with glasses that kept sliding down his nose. His face was pale, and he looked even more nervous than usual. "Rachel," he said quietly, "the power levels are dropping again. If we don't get new batteries soon, the shields won't hold much longer." She nodded grimly. Without the energy shields, the colony would be completely exposed to the harsh environment and to the krill. "I know," she replied. "We've sent another message to Earth. Maybe this time someone will listen." Daniel hesitated before speaking again. "Do you really think they'll answer?" After all this time, Rachel didn't respond right away. She wanted to believe help would come, but deep down, she doubted it. Earth had turned its back on colonies like theirs long ago, calling them too expensive to support. Outpost Delta wasn't important enough to save. Still, she couldn't give up. Not yet. Hours passed as the colonists worked tirelessly to keep things running. Then, just as the sun, or what was left of it, began to set behind the horizon, something strange happened. Alarms blared through the station, startling everyone. Rachel rushed to the main screen, heart pounding. At first, she thought it might be the krill launching another attack. But then she saw it, a fleet of ships appearing on the edge of the system. They weren't sleek military vessels or shiny corporate freighters. These ships looked old and beaten up, covered in dents and scorch marks. Some parts were held together with crude welding jobs, and others seemed mismatched, like they'd been salvaged from different wrecks. Despite their ragged appearance, the ships moved with purpose, heading straight for the colony. Rachel felt a mix of hope and dread. Who were these people? And why had they come? As the ships drew closer, one broke away from the group and docked at the station. A few moments later, a man stepped off the ship. He was tall and broad-shouldered, with short gray hair and piercing blue eyes. His name was Logan Drake, and he introduced himself as the captain of the fleet. Behind him stood a younger woman with short brown hair and a calm expression. Her name was Alina Carter, and she carried herself with quiet confidence. "We heard your call," Logan said bluntly, looking around at the worn-out colony. "Don't mistake this for charity. We'll help you, if you can pay." Rachel stared at him, unsure whether to feel relieved or terrified. The scavenger fleet had arrived, and nothing would ever be the same again. The arrival of the scavenger fleet brought a strange mix of emotions to Outpost Delta. Some colonists whispered words of gratitude, while others muttered curses under their breath. Logan Drake and his crew were not welcome guests. They were a necessary evil. Rachel Monroe watched as the scavengers moved through the station, their boots clanging against the metal floors. They carried themselves with confidence, but there was something rough about them, like they didn't care what anyone thought. Logan wasted no time laying out his terms. He gathered the colonists in the main hall, a large room filled with rusted chairs and flickering lights. The air smelled faintly of oil and sweat. Standing at the front, he crossed his arms and looked around at the crowd. His voice was calm but firm. "We're here because you asked for help," he said. "But help comes with a price. Half of your resources and an alliance against the Krill." The room erupted into murmurs. Some people shouted protests, while others nodded reluctantly. Rachel stepped forward, her hands clenched into fists. "Half of our resources?" she asked, her voice tight with anger. "That's everything we have left. What happens when winter hits, or if the Krill attack again?" Logan didn't flinch. "You don't have a choice," he replied. "Without us, you're dead. Take it or leave it." Rachel glanced at the faces around her. She saw fear in some, determination in others. Finally, she nodded. "Fine," she said, "but if you betray us, I'll make sure you regret it." Logan smirked faintly but said nothing. Elena Carter, standing quietly beside him, gave Rachel a small nod, almost like an apology. For a moment, Rachel wondered if Elena might be different from the rest of them, but there was no time to think about that now. Over the next few days, the scavengers began integrating themselves into the colony. They helped repair broken equipment, reinforced the outer walls, and trained the colonists in basic combat skills. Logan worked closely with Rachel, showing her maps and plans for defending the outpost. Despite his gruff demeanor, he clearly knew what he was doing. Still, Rachel couldn't shake the feeling that he was hiding something. Tensions between the colonists and the scavengers grew quickly. Many of the miners resented having to share their already limited supplies with outsiders. Others distrusted the scavengers' motives, believing they would abandon the colony once they got what they wanted. Arguments broke out frequently, and Rachel found herself constantly mediating disputes. One evening, Rachel decided to confront Elena. She found the young woman working on a damaged generator near the edge of the platform. Elena looked up as Rachel approached, wiping grease from her hands. "Can I help you?" she asked politely. "I want to know why you're really here," Rachel said bluntly. "Logan says you're here to help, but I don't buy it. What's in this for you?" Elena hesitated before answering. "It's true we're not doing this out of kindness," she admitted. "But it's also not just about profit. Logan. He used to be part of Earth's military. He was one of the best until they betrayed him. Now he takes care of people who've been abandoned by Earth, people like you." Rachel frowned. "And what about you? Why do you follow him?" Elena smiled faintly. "Because I believe in what he's trying to do. Not everyone gets a second chance, but Logan gives them one, even if his methods are complicated." Rachel didn't respond right away. She studied Elena's face, searching for any sign of dishonesty. But all she saw was sincerity. Still, she couldn't fully trust either of them, not yet. As the days passed, the scavengers continued preparing the colony for battle. Logan pushed everyone hard, demanding long hours and strict discipline. Some colonists complained, but others began to see the value in his leadership. Slowly, the outpost started to feel less like a crumbling ruin and more like a fortress. Despite the progress, Rachel couldn't ignore the unease in her chest. The Krill were still out there, watching and waiting. And though the scavenger fleet had brought hope, they had also brought danger. Whatever happened next, Rachel knew one thing for certain: the cost of survival would be high. For now, all she could do was prepare and pray that Logan Drake was as good as his word. The days grew shorter as Outpost Delta braced itself for the inevitable. The Krill hadn't attacked yet, but everyone could feel their presence like a shadow looming over the colony. Tensions between the colonists and the scavengers remained high, though some began to soften toward Logan Drake and his crew. Rachel Monroe still didn't trust him completely, But she couldn't deny that his leadership was making a difference. The outpost was stronger now than it had been in months. One evening, after another long day of preparation, Rachel found herself alone with Elena Carter in the control room. The younger woman was checking the sensors, her fingers moving quickly over the keyboard. Rachel hesitated before speaking. "Elena," she began, "can I ask you something?" Elena glanced up, surprised. "Sure," she said. "What's on your mind?" Rachel crossed her arms and looked out the window at the dark expanse of space. "Logan," she said simply. "Who is he, really? You told me once that he used to be part of Earth's military. What happened?" Elena sighed and leaned back in her chair. For a moment, she seemed unsure whether to answer. Then she nodded slowly. "It's not my story to tell," she admitted, "but maybe you deserve to know. Logan was one of the best commanders Earth had, smart, brave, and loyal. He led a mission to save a research station under attack by pirates. But when he got there, he found out the truth. The pirates were actually refugees fleeing from Earth's own policies, families with kids just trying to survive." Rachel frowned. "What did he do?" "He disobeyed orders," Elena continued. "Instead of attacking, he gave them safe passage. When Earth found out, they called him a traitor, stripped him of his rank, labeled him an outlaw. Most of his crew abandoned him, but a few stayed. Together, they built the scavenger fleet." Rachel listened silently, her mind racing. She had heard stories about soldiers who defied orders for the greater good, but those tales usually ended with heroes being celebrated, not cast aside. "So he's been fighting ever since?" she asked. Elena nodded. "Yeah. Not for glory or revenge, though. Just to help people who've been forgotten. Like you." Rachel turned away, staring at the blinking lights on the control panel. She wanted to believe Elena, to see Logan as more than just a ruthless opportunist. But it was hard. His methods were harsh, his demands unforgiving. Still, she couldn't ignore the fact that he had come when no one else would. The next morning, Logan called a meeting in the main hall. The colonists gathered reluctantly, their faces tired but alert. Logan stood at the front, his expression serious. "We don't have much time," he said without preamble. "The Krill are planning something big. I can feel it. We need to be ready." A man named Ben spoke up, his voice tense. "Ready for what? You haven't told us anything about your plan. How do we even know you're not setting us up to fail?" Logan's eyes narrowed. "You don't," he replied bluntly. "But if you want to live, you'll follow my lead. That's all I can promise." Rachel stepped forward, her voice steady. "Ben's right," she said. "We need to know what we're walking into. These people deserve answers." For a moment, Logan looked like he might argue. Then he sighed and unfolded a map on the table. It showed the layout of the colony and the surrounding area. "Here's the plan," he said. "We'll set traps along the perimeter. Explosives, tripwires, anything we can use to slow them down. When they come, we'll funnel them into the eastern quadrant and hit them hard." The room fell silent as the colonists absorbed the details. It was a risky strategy, but it made sense. Slowly, they began nodding in agreement. As the meeting broke up, Rachel lingered behind. She approached Logan, her arms crossed. "Thank you for sharing the plan," she said. "But remember this. If you betray us, you won't just lose our trust. You'll lose everything." Logan met her gaze, his expression unreadable. "I'm not here to betray anyone," he said finally. "I'm here to win." Rachel didn't respond. She simply turned and walked away, her thoughts swirling. Trusting Logan felt like stepping onto thin ice, but she knew they had no other choice. Whatever came next, they would face it together, or not at all. The calm before the storm didn't last long. Just 2 days after Logan's meeting, the krill struck without warning. Their insect-like forms swarmed over the outer walls of Outpost Delta, their sharp claws tearing through metal like paper. Alarms blared throughout the colony, waking everyone from restless sleep. The colonists scrambled to their assigned positions, gripping makeshift weapons and trying to steady their nerves. Rachel Monroe moved quickly, her heart pounding as she checked on the defenses Logan had set up. Explosives were rigged along the perimeter, and tripwires crisscrossed the ground outside the walls. She prayed they would work. Behind her, Elena Carter was shouting orders, her voice cutting through the chaos. "Stay sharp," she called. "Don't let them flank us." Logan Drake stood near the main gate, his rifle slung over his shoulder. He watched the Krill advance with cold determination. When the first wave hit the traps, explosions lit up the night sky, sending alien bodies flying in every direction. The colonists cheered briefly, but Logan silenced them with a sharp bark. "Save your energy," he snapped. "This isn't over yet." He was right. The Krill kept coming, undeterred by the losses. They crawled over the wreckage of their fallen comrades, their glowing eyes fixed on the colony. Rachel joined Logan at the gate, clutching a heavy wrench she'd taken from the workshop. "What now?" she asked, her voice tight. "Now we hold the line," Logan replied. Without waiting for a response, he raised his rifle and fired into the swarm. Rachel followed his lead, swinging her wrench at any Krill that got too close. The fight was brutal and chaotic. Claws scraped against metal, and the air filled with the sounds of screams and gunfire. For hours, the battle raged on. The colonists fought alongside the scavengers, their fear giving way to desperation. Ben, the man who had questioned Logan earlier, proved himself surprisingly brave, taking down several Krill with a hunting knife. Even Daniel Harper, usually so timid, found courage he didn't know he had, reloading weapons and patching up wounded fighters. But the cost was high. Bodies littered the ground, both human and alien. One young colonist, a girl named Mia, fell while trying to protect a group of children hiding in a storage room. Her death sent a wave of grief through the survivors, but there was no time to mourn. The Krill kept pushing forward, relentless and unyielding. Finally, just when it seemed like all hope was lost, Logan shouted an order. "Fall back to the eastern quadrant. Now." The colonists retreated as fast as they could, dragging the injured with them. Logan stayed behind, covering their escape with precise shots from his rifle. Rachel hesitated, torn between following orders and staying to help him. "Go." Logan barked when he saw her lingering. Reluctantly, she obeyed, sprinting toward the others. As soon as everyone was safely inside the eastern quadrant, Logan detonated the final set of explosives. The resulting blast tore through the Krill ranks, forcing them to retreat temporarily. The survivors collapsed where they stood, exhausted and battered. Rachel looked around at the faces of her people, some streaked with tears, others blank with shock. They had survived, for now, but the victory felt hollow. Too many lives had been lost. When Logan finally joined them, his face was smeared with dirt and sweat. He looked around at the group, his expression unreadable. "We held them off," he said simply, "but they'll be back. And next time, we might not be so lucky." No one argued. They knew he was right. For now, though, they allowed themselves a moment to rest. Rachel caught Logan's eye and nodded slightly, acknowledging what he had done. He didn't return the gesture, but she thought she saw something flicker in his gaze, something like respect. As the sun, or what was left of it, began to rise, painting the sky in shades of red and orange, Rachel realized something important. The scavenger fleet wasn't perfect, and neither was Logan Drake. But in the darkest hour, they had stood with the colonists and fought side by side. That meant something, even if it wasn't enough to erase her doubts completely. The victory over the Krill was short-lived. Though the colonists had managed to repel the attack, the cost weighed heavily on everyone. Supplies were running lower than ever, and tempers flared as exhaustion set in. The uneasy alliance between the colonists and the scavengers began to crack under the strain. Whispers of distrust spread like wildfire, and Rachel Monroe found herself caught in the middle. One morning, Daniel Harper rushed into the control room where Rachel was reviewing damage reports. His face was pale, and his hands trembled as he held up a clipboard. "Rachel," he stammered, "we have a problem. Supplies are disappearing from the storerooms." Rachel's stomach sank. She had feared something like this might happen. "Are you sure?" she asked, though deep down she already knew the answer. Daniel nodded. "I checked the inventory twice. Someone's been taking food, tools, even medical supplies. It has to be the scavengers. They're the only ones who could get away with it." Rachel clenched her fists, anger bubbling inside her. If Logan Drake thought he could betray them after everything they'd been through, he was dead wrong. She stormed out of the control room, heading straight for the scavenger camp near the edge of the outpost. Logan was there, leaning against a crate while Alina Carter inspected a damaged piece of equipment. "Logan," Rachel called out, her voice sharp enough to cut through the noise. He turned to face her, raising an eyebrow at her tone. "What is this about stolen supplies?" she demanded. Logan's expression didn't change. "I don't know what you're talking about," he replied calmly. "Don't play dumb with me," Rachel snapped. "Things are missing. Things we can't afford to lose. Your people are the only ones who could have taken them." Before Logan could respond, Alina stepped forward. "We haven't touched your supplies," she said firmly. "We came here to help, not to steal from you." Rachel wanted to believe her, but the evidence was hard to ignore. "Then explain it," she shot back. "Because someone is hoarding resources, and I'm not letting anyone sabotage us." Logan crossed his arms, his jaw tightening. "Fine," he said. "Let's find out who's behind this. But if you accuse my crew again without proof, there will be consequences." Rachel agreed, though reluctantly. Together, they organized a search of the outpost. What they discovered shocked everyone. Hidden in one of the abandoned storage rooms was a stash of supplies. Food, medicine, fuel, all neatly stacked and guarded by a small group of colonists. Among them was Ben, the same man who had questioned Logan's motives during the planning meeting. When confronted, Ben didn't deny it. "We were just trying to survive," he shouted, his voice trembling with desperation. "The Krill will be back, and when they come, we'll need these supplies to escape. Why should we stay and fight for nothing?" Rachel felt a mix of anger and pity. "You think running will save you?" she asked. "If you leave now, you'll die out there. Alone." Ben glared at her, but he didn't argue further. Logan stepped forward, his presence commanding. "This stops now," he said, his voice low and dangerous. "Anyone caught stealing or hiding supplies will answer to me. Understand?" The conspirators nodded silently, their faces filled with shame. Rachel watched as Logan turned away, his expression unreadable. Despite his harsh words, she realized he wasn't interested in punishment. He just wanted order. Still, the betrayal stung. These were her people, and yet some of them had been willing to abandon the rest. Later that evening, Rachel sat alone on the edge of the platform, staring out at the stars. She felt drained, both physically and emotionally. Alina joined her after a while, sitting quietly beside her. "It's never easy," Alina said softly, "choosing who to trust." Rachel sighed. "How do you do it?" she asked. "How do you keep going when everyone seems ready to turn on each other?" Alina smiled faintly. "You focus on the ones worth fighting for," she replied. "And you hope they'll do the same for you." Rachel didn't respond right away. Instead, she looked out at the horizon, wondering how much longer they could hold on. The Krill would return, and the next battle might be their last. All they could do was prepare and trust that somehow they'd make it through together. The Krill were coming back, and this time, they weren't holding back. The colony's sensors picked up their movements days in advance, giving Logan Drake and Rachel Monroe just enough time to prepare for the final stand. The scavengers and colonists worked tirelessly, reinforcing walls, setting traps, and stockpiling what little ammunition they had left. Everyone knew this battle would decide their fate. Logan called another meeting in the main hall, his expression grimmer than ever. "This is it. he said, his voice cutting through the tense silence. "The Krill are bringing everything they've got. If we lose, there won't be a second chance." Rachel stood beside him, her arms crossed. She had come to trust Logan more than she expected, though she still didn't fully understand him. "We can do this," she told the group, her tone firm but calm. "We've survived worse. Together." The plan was simple but risky. They would use the remaining explosives to create a massive trap in the eastern quadrant, luring the Krill into a narrow corridor where they could be ambushed. It was a desperate strategy, and everyone knew it. But with no other options, they agreed to follow Logan's lead. As the Krill approached, the outpost braced itself. The air was thick with tension, every sound amplified by fear. Children huddled in safe rooms, while fighters took their positions along the walls. Rachel gripped a rifle tightly, her hands trembling slightly. She wasn't used to combat, but she refused to let her people down. When the attack began, it was chaos. The Krill swarmed the perimeter, their numbers overwhelming. Explosions rocked the ground as traps detonated, sending alien bodies flying. But for every Krill that fell, two more seemed to take its place. The colonists fought bravely, but the tide of enemies kept pushing forward. Elena Carter led a small team to hold the gate, her calm demeanor steadying those around her. "Stay focused," she shouted, firing her weapon with precision. Beside her, Ben, the same man who had tried to hoard supplies, fought fiercely, determined to redeem himself. His actions earned nods of respect from the others, even Logan. In the midst of the battle, Logan turned to Rachel. "It's time," he said, motioning toward the eastern quadrant. "Get everyone into position." Rachel nodded and relayed the order, her heart pounding as she watched the survivors retreat. Once they were safely inside, Logan gave the signal. Elena stepped forward, volunteering to stay behind to trigger the explosives. "I'll do it," she said firmly, meeting Logan's gaze. For a moment, he looked like he might argue, but then he nodded. "Be quick," he said, his voice tight. As Elena raced to the control panel, the rest of the group prepared for the explosion. The Krill poured into the corridor, their glowing eyes reflecting madness. Elena pressed the button just as the aliens reached her. The blast was enormous, shaking the entire outpost and sending a shockwave through the area. The corridor collapsed, burying countless Krill beneath rubble. Back in the eastern quadrant, the survivors waited in silence, their faces pale with dread. When the dust settled, Logan moved to check on Elena, but she didn't return. Her sacrifice had saved them all, but the loss hit hard. Even Logan, who rarely showed emotion, looked shaken. "We have to finish this," Rachel said finally, her voice steady despite the tears in her eyes. With renewed determination, the group launched a counterattack, driving the remaining Krill away. By dawn, the battle was over. The outpost was battered but still standing. As the sun rose, Rachel looked around at the weary faces of her people. They had won, but the cost had been devastating. Logan stood nearby, his expression unreadable. For the first time, Rachel saw not just a ruthless leader, but a man who carried the weight of every life lost under his command. The Krill were gone. For now. But the scars of the fight would remain forever. The morning after the battle was quiet, almost unnaturally so. The air smelled of smoke and ash, and the ground was littered with debris from the fight. Survivors wandered through the outpost, their faces pale and hollow, as they began the grim task of cleaning up. Rachel Monroe stood near the edge of the platform, staring at the horizon. The sun, or what was left of it, cast long shadows over the battered colony. They had won, but the victory felt heavy. Logan Drake walked up beside her, his usual confidence replaced by a rare moment of vulnerability. "We did what we came here to do," he said, his voice low. "You're safe, for now." Rachel glanced at him, her expression unreadable. "At what cost?" she asked. "Elena's gone, so are dozens of others. Was it worth it?" Logan didn't answer right away. He looked out at the wreckage, his jaw tightening. "War never comes cheap," he said finally. "But sometimes you don't get a choice. You fight because if you don't, everything you care about gets wiped out." Rachel nodded slowly, though she wasn't sure she agreed. She had seen Logan's leadership firsthand, his ability to make hard decisions, his willingness to sacrifice for the greater good. But she also knew that his methods left scars. Scars on the people who followed him, and scars on himself. By midday, Logan announced that the scavenger fleet would be leaving. The colonists gathered to watch as the battered ships prepared for departure. Some whispered words of gratitude, while others remained silent, their feelings too complicated to put into words. Rachel approached Logan one last time, unsure of what to say. "You saved us," she admitted, her voice steady. "But I'll never fully trust you." Logan smirked faintly, though there was no humor in it. "Trust isn't my business," he replied. "Survival is." He turned to leave, but paused for a moment. "Take care of them," he added, nodding toward the colonists. Then he boarded the Iron Resolve *, disappearing inside without another word. As the fleet launched into the sky, Rachel watched until the ships vanished from sight. She felt a strange mix of emotions: relief, anger, sadness, and even a little respect. The scavenger fleet had been their last hope, and despite everything, they had delivered. In the days that followed, the colony began to rebuild. The work was slow and difficult, but there was a new sense of purpose among the survivors. They had faced their darkest hour and come out the other side. Rachel made sure Alina Carter's name was remembered, along with all the others who had given their lives to protect the outpost. One evening, as Rachel sat alone in the control room, Daniel Harper joined her. He held a cup of weak coffee in his hands, offering it to her. "It's not much," he said, "but I thought you could use it." Rachel smiled faintly, accepting the drink. "Thanks," she said. They sat in silence for a while, watching the stars twinkle in the endless blackness. "Do you think they'll come back?" Daniel asked after a while, nodding toward the sky where the scavenger fleet had disappeared. Rachel shook her head. "I don't know," she admitted. "Maybe, or maybe we'll never see them again." Daniel hesitated before speaking again. "Do you think Logan really cared about us, or was it just business?" Rachel thought about it for a moment. "I think he cared," she said finally, "but not in the way most people do. For him, it's about doing what needs to be done, even if it costs him everything." Daniel nodded, seeming satisfied with her answer. As they sat together, the outpost felt quieter than ever, but beneath the silence, there was a spark of hope. The krill were gone, the colony was still standing, and life would go on. Rachel didn't know what the future held. She only knew that when all seemed lost, Earth's most hated fleet had arrived and changed everything. Whether Logan Drake was a hero or a villain, history would decide. For now, she was just grateful to be alive.